Great. So in this exercise, we're going to go through the exercise in Excel, working with a data set on 3 coffee shops and their transaction times. The main goal is to try to understand which time of day at which coffee shop is the busiest. So you can think of this as like, what if we're trying to inform our decision on where to hire a new barista? So which time of day and which coffee shop would be the best to increase our staffing? Okay, so as always, we go to the part 1 page. We go to the Excel exercise that corresponds with the part we're in. So this is 1.1. Click download. Sorry, 1.3. Click download. Go over to our Finder window. We have downloads here. We'll just drag this over to part 1, and then to avoid getting disorganized, just to keep things in order, we'll just relabel this as part 1, 3, and then hit enter. Okay, and we will open this in Excel. And as always, we get this possible data loss warning. So we'll hit save as, save it as a Excel workbook in part 1 folder. Hit save. And then we can just verify that that Excel has created a duplicate, but in the Excel format. Okay, so you can see already that we have a column that represents transaction times. And then we have a sales outlet column. So this is telling us which coffee shop is which. And we have three different outlets. One is labeled 3, one is labeled 8, and one is labeled 5, I believe. So we have 3 different labels. And so what we're going to do is, first we're going to skip the categorization, which we've already done in a different exercise. So you've seen how to sort of turn transaction times or something quantifiable, categorical, into a bar chart. And we do that by finding all the unique values. So to do this, in this case, we just find all the unique sales outlets, and then we count up how many times it appears in the data set. So we're going to skip that because we've already done it, and we're going to do something new. So I'm going to create a new sheet here, and we'll label this as, right-click, rename this as figures. So what we want to do is create a histogram of, it's like our time variable. We want to know what times of day are busiest. And then we're going to try to create a histogram off of this information. So to do this, we Excel, we could just go through and insert a histogram, and it would give us some indication of what's going on. And we could set our bin width. Let's just say this is, we could set this to 1 or 0.1. And it could tell you, in the bottom here, the bin widths. The weird thing here is, we have this time-coded variable. And that's a little bit funny. So we could play around with this. We get sort of a sense, though, of the distribution throughout the day. You can see, like, this roughly corresponds to the morning. This would be halfway through the day. So most of our traffic comes in the morning, and after open, it sort of starts picking up, and then mid-morning is the peak. And this is what you would expect from a coffee shop. So this would be our frequency data. But this would not be enough to tell us what's going on. I mean, first off, you know, the bins here are, it's hard to read this. So we want something probably slightly better if we wanted to communicate information about what's going on with frequencies. This is just really hard to read. So the first step is going to be making this thing look okay. The second step is going to be then trying to plot this kind of information, but across all three categories. Okay, so what I'm going to do is actually delete this. So we're going to do this in two steps. One, we're going to use the frequency command, which will turn a list of bins and the times into something we can visualize a little bit better. And then second, we're going to do a pivot table, which will be another sheet, but we'll get there when we do. Okay, so the first thing, I'm just going to create a column that represents the bins that we might care about. Call this column bins, and then we're just going to select time codes. So 00:00:00 will be our first one. And this is telling us this is hour 0, this is minute 0, second 0. So this is exactly midnight. This time code runs from midnight to all the way up to 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. So we're just gonna put the first one in here. Excel is really good at figuring out what we're trying to do as we code these things. So it's, you know, I've basically just copied and dragged all the way down. It knows we're trying to construct time codes. So we can continue to drag these, and this tells us, you know, this is 8 p.m., but the time code is saying 20 hours. Which is the 20th hour after midnight. We don't need this last one because it's redundant with the first one. Okay, so we've listed out all of the hours. So this is telling us the starting point of the bin. And then we're going to create a frequency column. So these are all the bins we're going to bin our data down into. And then we'll have the frequency. All right, I'm just going to double click on this divider, which is going to space it out. Double click on this, sort of make it more compact. Okay, so in this first cell, I'm going to type out frequency. And what this does is open up the function frequency. And you can see frequency takes in two entries. One is the data array, and the other is the bins. So the data array we care about is actually in the other sheet. We've moved over to the sheet just for sort of neatness purposes, but we can refer to the other sheet. And the way we do that is we just click on the other sheet, and then we select the data we care about. It's still referencing the function in the other sheet, but you can see it's now added a prefix to whatever we do. It's saying, look, the data we're referring to isn't just in the sheet we care about. It's referring to a different sheet. So we have part 1, 3 copy sales receipts, which is the name of the sheet that we're now working in, our main sheet. So I'm just going to select this column. So now it's saying not only are we in part 1 copy sales 1, 3 copy sales receipts, but we're actually working with column C. So the syntax here is we have the sheet reference followed by the column. And this syntax here is saying we have the column C, colon C. So we're referring to the entire column. And this is just Excel's way of saying just take all the data in the column. Okay, and then I'm going to hit comma. So now we're going to look for the bins array. And we've created the bins in the figures sheet. So we'll just select this. So now we're referring to the figure sheet, and we're looking at A2 through A25. Okay, so that's for our bins, and then close this off, and then we construct we just hit enter, and it makes that thing for us. It's nice that computers do that. Could you imagine doing this by hand? People used to do these kinds of things. All right, so now we have the frequency, we have the bins, and this allows us to plot our data. So one thing we could do, we just select the data. We're going to ignore this last point. Go up here to histogram, hit histogram, and it makes an ugly histogram for us. So let's, like we do, double click on the bins, go to bin width, and then maybe say something funny here. The thing is, it's referring to a time code, which is not like a thing we care so much about. It's really hard to sort of reference this, like before. It's really hard to reference this for bin sizes. So I mean, one thing we could do is create a new column and call this hours. Now we can't use hours for the bins themselves, but what we can do is use it for the histogram. So what I'm going to do is hit enter hour, and then what it's going to do is take this time code, what it's calling a serial number, and then strip it down to the hour. So it's the 0th hour, and then we can just drag this down, and you can see all it's doing is taking the hour from the time code and putting it over here. So it's stripping it of all of its like time code nonsense. So now we can select these things. Actually, this might give us some problems. So let's move these values over here. Okay, so now we'll just select these things. I think Excel uses the left-hand side as the bins for the histograms. Okay, so again, we have pretty weird bins. Let's set this to 1 hour. Oh, what I'm doing wrong here is we need a bar chart. So we could have used, because this is sort of frequency data, Excel, when it's constructing the histogram, when you tell it to plot a histogram, what it's looking for is something to bin. But here we've already binned, so we can construct a bar chart, or what we call a bar chart, but in reality is giving us a histogram. Okay, so that's what this is telling us. So the next thing we'll do is use what we call a pivot table to summarize our data in a slightly different way. So here it'd be better to have a histogram, but we've used a bar chart with sort of the bins that we've constructed on our own using frequency to create a plot that looks like this. This isn't so great. It's fine. But what we're going to do, this doesn't fully answer the question of which location and time should we hire for. And we have enough information to we have enough sort of the right construction of data to help us answer this question. And what we're going to do is actually create a pivot table. This is a more sort of powerful tool. So what we're going to do is I'm going to click on the data set, and then I'm going to hit Command A. And what this is going to do is select the entire data set. So Command A selects all of the columns and all of the rows that have entries in them. And what I'm going to do is go up here to Insert and click on Pivot Table. Pivot Table is going to allow us to summarize our data set in a slightly different way. So I'm going to click on leave we've already selected the range, and then what we want to do is create a new worksheet. So click OK. That's going to create a new worksheet for us. It doesn't have anything in it yet. What we're going to do is go over here to the fields. So we have filters, we have columns, we have rows, and we have values. So what we want to do, just for the formatting, we want rows that represent the hours, and then we want columns that represent the coffee shops themselves. And then in each one of the rows, we want Excel to sort of count up the number of transactions in a coffee shop in that hour. This will create a sort of shape to the data where we have columns representing the counts in the coffee shop in that hour, and then the rows are going to represent the hours. Okay, so in the rows we want transaction time. So we're going to click on this, then we're going to drag it. You didn't see that happen. So my computer froze up. Let's start that over. So we're going to click the checkbox here, and that enters transaction time in the rows. So we have rows, and these are the different labels. So it's not showing all of the times during the day. Like it's not showing 11 p.m. But that's because there are no entries at 11 p.m. Okay, and then for the columns, we want the store ID or the sales outlet ID. So one thing we can do is just copy sales outlet ID into the columns. So we can move that over here. Okay, so we have the rows representing the hours, and then the columns representing the store ID. And now we want the thing for it to sort of look at and try to count up. And that is the transaction time. So we're just gonna, we used it to construct the bins for the rows, but we also just wanted to count how many times it's showing up. So we drag it in and it's counting the number of transactions. There's a whole lot more we can do with pivot tables, but this is good enough for our purposes. Okay, so Magic, it does this thing. Pivot tables are a pretty powerful tool. All right, so it's telling us in 1 a.m. there are 22 sales at store number 5. And then another example would be at 2 p.m. there are 1,100 sales at store 3. So that's what each one of these elements are telling us. We also have the grand total, which is just the sum in each one of these hours. So if we wanted to, we could insert a histogram. I'm going to select these things. Histogram. Oops, not histogram. We want the bar. So that's selecting the whole table. So you can see these different colors are representing the bars, like the vertical height, like the count for each one of these 3 coffee shops. But this isn't a great way of visualizing our data. What we actually want is, for some reason it's not letting me. Excel is very particular sometimes. Yeah, that's these kinds of things can be a little bit frustrating when you're trying to just construct a plot of just the one value. But what we want is actually we want a description of a visual display of this information, of the counts in each one of the 3 coffee shops. So we can go into Insert and then select 2D column, which is the same thing. For some reason, Excel thought we wanted this and wouldn't let us do anything else. So this tells us something important about where the transactions are happening. So you can see, first off, that this is a very messy picture. But second, you can, if you wanted to, use this to answer our question. Which coffee shop at which time is the most busy? Where should we be hiring for? What's the peak? And that turns out to be coffee shop 8 in the morning. We can see the highest peaks happen for that shop at that time. But this is not a great way of displaying this information. So instead of using this sort of vertical bar, which is what we've done with bar charts and histograms, we're actually going to do this slightly differently. We're going to go into Insert, click on this thing, which is a 2D line graph. We could do a 3D line graph, but like I've mentioned in other videos, we want to keep things as simple as possible and just try to communicate as directly the data that we are intending. So we click on 2D line, and that gives us a line graph, which looks like this, which is sort of a new tool for us, a line graph. And what line graphs allow us to do is see sort of histogram-like data. For one, it allows us to do other types of things, but it allows us to connect through time different sort of series of information. So in this case, we have 3 different coffee shops with 3 different counts, and we want to show all 3 of them at the same time. Before, with the bars, they would sort of get in the way of seeing the differences. Here, because we just have sort of the peaks, we're sort of connecting each one of the tops of the bars kind of together with a line, and then just deleting the bars themselves. And that's what we get here. And here, it's a little easier to see that if we wanted to hire for the peak, we would hire at coffee shop 8 in the morning. And then if we wanted to hire someone in the afternoon, that person might go to coffee shop 3. Okay, so this is the thing. We've used a pivot table and introduced a line graph. Nicely done. And so to be complete here, it didn't give us a title, so we could go into Insert, or let's see. I just kind of clicked around and found Add Chart Element, and we could add a bunch of things. So we could add a chart title above the chart, and this might be coffee shop transactions. And then if you wanted to, you could add count on the vertical axis or time on the horizontal axis. But I'm going to leave this here for now. The last thing we'll do is just save as a picture. We'll call this part 1.3 line, and then we'll put this in figures. Okay, and we'll leave it here.